lunch break, and so to the first afternoon session with Leticia Rodríguez Morado, who is a digital analytics specialist, talking today about analyzing forms with Matomo and different mechanisms you can use for that. So will be a very interesting talk. Thank you, Leticia, for being here.
Thank you, Peter. So let's go to start. Hello and welcome, everyone. This talk, as Peter just said, is about how to get insight with Matomo to increase form conversions and optimize the user experience. We will review two different approaches to achieve this using Matomo. First, we will focus on goals, the classic and most common way to measure and collect relevant information about the forms. And later, we will review the Form Analytics plugin, an option that allows us to integrate within our instance advanced reports about how visitors are interacting with the form. Knowing both methods will be helpful to optimize lead generation and customer relationships across forms. I'm not going to tell you anything new about this. Is everything already published? Just as a summary about my experience using Matomo in our daily work to analyze forms. First thing, I want to introduce me briefly. As Peter said, I was working as web analyst over 10 years in agencies and in end clients. And currently, I am in charge of analytics projects at optimizar.info, where we mainly use Matomo to develop measurement strategies across multiple sectors and markets. We noticed that there was little documentation about Matomo in Spanish, so we decided it would be useful to spread the word and help people get started in web analytics with Matomo. So from 1 year ago, we are developing Spanish documentation, open it to anyone that want to use it. Let's go to start with the topic of the talk. And here comes the first question, because we are going to start with the basics. What is a form? A web form collects information sent by user, and this information is processed by the organization in order to perform a service. In practice, our forms are just answers willingly submitted by the users. So this means that forms allow users to keep in touch with the organization, give their opinion, or hire a service. And this is a critical functionality in the relationship between users and the organization. As this is critical, and we can see every day that most webs have forms to interact with their users, not matter what the purpose of the website is. We can see that there are a lot of kinds of forms. Most of them share the same characteristics, given the forms consist of questions which must be clear, concise, and of course focused on the topic or the purpose of the request. But in the end, a form is defined by and structured depending on the necessary information that need to be collected. We can have different kind of forms. We can have a classic sign-up form to acquire new customers, a newsletter sign-up form to get new subscribers, or a website feedback form or generic contact form to have relation with clients or to collect user opinions, or, for example, a login form to access to a platform. In all of them, it's important to provide a good user experience, make the transaction as easy as possible. So we need to understand how users are using them. And analyzing forms is the process of examining them to improve their design and effectiveness. It involves studying the structure, the surrounding context, the user journey through the form fields, and its overall impact on the website. And why I think that this is very interesting and I propose this talk, because it's true that tracking form analytics can help us to understand how people are interacting with our forms. And a form can have a higher chance of being filled in and submitted depending on how we are structuring the questions and sorted them. Analyze form is going to help us to understand which form elements cause user problems and prevent them from completing the desired actions. The analysis of forms help us to lose less visitors by learning about user behavior and their problem points on a form. We can identify if we have problems with different devices when users try to interact or to access to a form. If the page load is blocking the content or some part of the form. If there are fields in the form that are not clearly labeled, or there are unexpected errors and confusing messages or instructions to follow the form. So analyze forms can have an impact on conversion, and a deep analysis in forms is going to help or is essential in order to optimize the web usability, because, for example, we can understand how users are interacting with a form is in the footer, and maybe we need to move this form to other place on the site. Is going to help us to improve the customer acquisition, because we can identify qualified traffic based on the campaign or the specific reference that we have about this user. And of course, is going to help us to optimize the relationship with our customers, because we can develop simple processes and simple transactions to talk with them directly. I like this because analyzing forms help us to get insights to increase form conversions. And how we can do this with Matomo? As I said before, there are several ways that we can use to understand the impact that a form has in our site. We are going to be today focuses on goals and in deploying form analytics. In my experience, these both functionalities are very useful to get started to analyze this kind of functionalities that we are offering in our site. With the goals, that I say is a common way to collect information about form conversions and their impact on the site. We can have an easy way to start because it's very simple to configure. And with the form analytics plugin, we are going to have all the detail about all the fields and the pain points that we can find in our form. With these both methods, it's possible to measure form conversions, but they have different features that we will have to consider when we using them. There are other functionalities to collect and analyze data with Matomo, as for example, the other plugins focused on usability, as for example, the session recordings on the interactive heat maps that allow us to understand almost in real time the impact of how user is interacting directly with a field. Or for example, we can use events and personalize a custom event to collect the error message that a user can find in a form. There are a lot of ways to analyze forms. Today, as I say, we are going to be focused in the first two methods. And let's go to start with the goals. It's a functionality that we have by default in all Matomo instance. It's a report included in all Matomo dashboards. Goals can report how often a form has been successfully submitted. The configuration is very simple. The setup is very fast, providing speed and agility to start data collection. All dimensions and metrics employed in all goal reports are well known. it's easy to get used to analyze this data. The goal reports are very, very comprehensive, using dimensions, these reports, and using dimensions that we know, and it's very easy to start to segment the goals based in any dimension that we had previously configured on the tool. For example, channel, devices, country, the page, or for example, any custom dimension that we created. As I say, goals is a basic Matomo configuration. So all known functionalities apply here: the custom alerts, the email reports, the segments, and as I say, the custom dimensions. It's a basic Matomo configuration. It's not difficult to use this functionality, and all the conversion metrics are going to be available not only in the course reports, are going to be available in all the reports of Matomo. So it's possible to check the form conversions in audience, behavior, or acquisition reports, among others. And all right, it's time to create a goal. When we want to create a goal, as I say before, it's a simple implementation. It's something that we can do directly. We can set up a goal from the administration or in Matomo. We need to go to administration, website, and goals. And how we do it? Well, we need to create a rule for that. And what do we need a rule for? We need to let Matomo find out when a form was successfully sent. It needs to detect it in some way. So we have to select a condition that triggers the action. There are several ways to do it, but the most common ones used to trigger a submit form are when Matomo detects a page change to a specific location, or when Matomo detects a specific event on the page, as for example, the for submit event. I believe with this, Matomo can identify most forms nowadays, so it covers most of the ways of the webs. Otherwise, it's also possible to implement a goal using JavaScript. We can get even more accurate measurements and fine-tune details of the specific websites. So here we have how we choose the rule for page change. It makes sense to use this configuration when the browser goes to a different location as part of the submit process. For example, if the page goes to a thank you or confirmation page after sending a survey or after sending a contact form. At this point, we can select how the page is detected. The URL regular expressions are very useful in case when the exact URL is not known beforehand, or when there is more than one destination page. Then with regular expression, we can do this. Of course, the condition matches when the user views that page, and Matomo then count the goal. The other way that we have to do is, on the other hand, we can use events. This way it's possible to identify with an event data form is sent successfully. The event should be previously defined in the tag manager or coded in line, or in some platforms, we can find that these events are sent automatically, okay, in common platforms. In this case, the condition, of course, matches when the event is sent, and Matomo counts then a goal. When we have this setup done, the goal reports become accessible from the main Matomo dashboard on the goal reports tab. And then we can find the main metrics related with our goal. We have the conversion, that is the most important, is the number of successfully forms submitted. And also we have the conversion rate. The conversion rate is the percentage of the website visitors who submit a form correctly. A conversion rate is found by taking the total number of people who convert, for example, signing up to our mailing list, and dividing it by the overall number of people who visited the site. So conversion rate is the most important metric because analyzing its evolution over time, it is possible to understand trends and find out if traffic to the form is reaching its full potential. For example, in this example, we can see the evolution of the conversion rate for signing up subscription form, and we can detect easily a conversion pattern. Also, there are metrics about revenue that could be configured with the amount or an estimation value of the conversion, but we don't use these metrics too much with the forms, but sometimes could be useful. Also, is it possible if sometimes we have a form with several steps as pages, we can configure a specific funnel with the previous pages to the conversion. But in general, the form that we are working only have one step and in one page, so we don't use to use the funnel in these cases. Only when we are trying to analyze forms in the checkout process of an e-commerce or something like that are longer process to send the form. One of my favorite reports that we can find in the goals section is the goal breakdown report. This is a set of reports that include some of the most useful from the report section. These reports summarize the goal and the main metrics related with the goal by various reporting criteria. The goals breakdown report helps us understand the conditions that lead to goal completions on the site. It allows us to understand easily how forms work in different markets, in different marketing channels, in different devices, in browser, in pages. And breakdown goal reports are essential to get insight analyzing form goals. For example, here we can see an example with the conversion segmented by channel type or by device type. With this segmentation, we can identify in which channel is more qualified the traffic or in which devices we should to be focused to make any usability improvement because we can detect the performance. And there are two dimensions that I should to highlight in these breakdown reports. These two dimensions are the visit to conversion and the days to conversion. I absolutely like to use analyzing goal with both of them because these dimensions help us to understand how long it takes for people to complete the goal on site, send the form in visits and in days. And this call suggests users are coming through multiple channels, or this can or we can understand if we have a direct conversion with our sign-up process or with the form that we have. For example, here we can see that for this newsletter form, the 60% of the visitors are sending it in the first visit. And we can see that the 60, 70, 80% of the visitors are sending the form in the first or second visit. So we almost have a direct conversion. But in the other case, we can see that in a registered form, that is to have a new sign up for a paid service, more than the 40% of visitors need more than 5 visits to convert. So this is suggesting us that users are coming to our site through multiple channels. And in this is happening, then we need to go to other goal report that is very relevant. That is the multi-channel conversion attribution. With this report, if we identify, as we saw in the previous example, that most part of users are doing more than one visit before submitting a form, then here we can check from which channels are they doing their visits. Because by default, when we view the channels that lead to a conversion, Matomo shows only the channel of the last non-direct visit. However, as we just saw, in reality, several channels usually contribute to a conversion as a visitor, or user often visit a website several times before they actually convert. By applying different attribution models, that is what we can do here, we get a more accurate view on which channels actually lead to a conversion. For example, here we can see, okay, which channels are interacting as first channel during this path, okay, in which channels users are knowing our product or they are knowing our brand, and in which channels we are closing the conversions, through which channels the user is sending the form that is our goal. To have these reports available, we need to go to the configuration sections, to the administration section. And when we create a goal, we need to activate this option, the multi-channel conversion attribution. These reports, as you see, are completely necessary to understand the complexity of our service, or the maturity time, or how many points we will have with the user until conversion. So we have seen how to work with goals in order to analyze forms with Matomo. It's not difficult. It's a default functionality that all of us know. Let's see how we can complement these insights with form analytics. Form Analytics is a plugin that is available in the marketplace of Matomo. You can use this if you have your own instance on-premise, or if you are using, for example, Matomo Cloud with a pre-configured instance. The plugin allows us to integrate within our Matomo instance reports to analyze forms. We can collect metrics such how often a form was viewed, started, submitted, converted, and for example, we can know how long users spend on forms or fields and how long they hesitate, or if the fields, if all the fields are used in a form. This means that it's possible to have the detailed funnel about users' activity on a form. Is it possible to use these reports directly on Matomo dashboard and check all the data? For me, it's one of my favorite features in the tool. And it's not complicated in the setup, but these reports it's not as simple as we saw in the goals. Form analytics reports can be set up as the goals from the administration section. In this case, we need to go to administration websites and forms. And here we can add and configure the forms we want to display in the reports. In order to successfully collect data from a form, we need to define a rule according to the form we intend to measure. It's required to know the corresponding name or ID of the web form. For example, in this case, here we have a basic example. Okay, we have in the code the name of the form and the HTML code that is form contact. So then we configure the same name in the tool. Doing this, all reports are going to be available for this report to get for this form to get the detail on interactions on this form. When we are configuring a form, we need to know something very important. That is that we need to implement, we need to configure the conversion of each form. This is because Matomo differentiates between form submits and form conversion. If we don't manually configure the conversions in the Matomo administration section, we will not be able to see any form conversion in the reports. So this is the most important thing on form analytics implementation. Be sure that we have the conversion correctly implemented. This is critical. It's critical to set up the conversion of the form because this metric is going to be the main performance metrics of forms. We are going to be able, if people is using and sending it correctly, based on the conversion. And how we can configure the conversions. We have three ways, three methods, or the easy way to configure the conversions, because while form submits are detected automatically, for conversions need to be either configured or triggered manually in the website. There we can specify for each form some simple rules to let Matomo know when the form is converted. The easy way to implement for conversion is based in URL. This is an option if there is a page that visitor land on after completing a form, such a thank you page that we saw before in the goals. As soon as a visitor visits a page that matches at least one of the criteria, the form will be converted. The same case that we saw before with the goals. If this is not our case, the most accurate way is to measure the conversion using Tag Manager or directly JavaScript. I usually do it with Tag Manager because this option provides me a great flexibility. It's possible to customize the configuration of the trigger and activate it when a submit event is detected. Or for example, based on a message that is shown to the user on the screen when the form has been successfully submitted. We have more flexibility using Tag Manager, and we can debug any problem and modify it in a easy way. And here we can see that we have a third option that is whenever a form is submitted. This option collects all successful and unsuccessful form submissions. So it's easy to configure this way, but it may not be as accurate a measurement because we can have inflated conversion metrics because we are not measuring only the successful submits. We are measuring any kind of submit, and maybe we are measuring with this way a conversion, the errors or the problems that the user is having when is trying to send a forms. The problem that we have configuring forms is that sometimes can be complicated, because sometimes there are forms without the name or the ID parameter, or sometimes there are a lot of distinct forms on the site and all of them have the same ID or the same name. Or sometimes we have one form, but this form is in a lot of pages and always have a different ID or name. And in this case, sometimes it's difficult to find a pattern to collect all of them. We can try to solve these cases with regular expressions if this is possible. But it's true that sometimes maybe the name or the ID is directly known on the code. So we can have inconsistent data on the reports. As here, for example, we can see the data of a pop-up form. We can detect the viewers when the user interacts with the form, a pop-up is opened. We cannot track them correctly, then we don't have started interactions, we cannot detect the submission, and we only have the conversion. So finally here, we have data, we have information, but we can not use this for anything because it's totally inconsistent, the time and also the rates. This can be solved technically, but maybe we have restricted access to make modifications on the page. And in this case, we recommend, if it's not possible to obtain the name or the ID of the form, another method that is to indicate the page where the form is located, so that it can be automatically detected all the forms that there are in the page. Of course, this method is not accurate when we have more than one form in the same page, okay? Because it's going to measure all the forms together. But this is an alternative when we don't have the name or the ID that is possible to find that. Once that we have configured the form in the admin section, we can access to the main dashboard of Matomo, and in the report section, we can check the metrics, the dimensions about forms. Something important here is that we are going to find metrics that only apply to forms. We have interaction metrics as views, viewers, started, submitters, and of course the conversions. We have rates like KPIs to control the evolution, the trends, and detect problem easily. The started rate that I really like, the conversion rate, the submitter rate, and we have the detail about how many times is the user on the form, how many times signs view the form, start interact with them, and finally convert. The two most important metrics are often the form started rate and of course, the conversion rate. The form started rate lets us know how people start filling out the form after seeing it. So it's very, very important to detect problems. We want that people send the form, but maybe people didn't find the form inside the site. And of course, it's so important, the conversion rate, because let us know our goal, how many people of those people who started filling out form also completed it. With these metrics, we can understand how the form is working. I say before that we have metrics about time, and I would like to highlight the hesitation time, because this is an average time or with these metrics, we can have the average time that a visitor hesitates to start interacting with a form. The time is calculated as the difference between the time of the page load, when the user arrives to the page, and the time of the first interaction of the user with a form. So this is so useful, as I said before, to understand, okay, users know that I have a form in my page, because this is first step to have the interaction, and then give the user the possibility to send us the information that we are requesting them. These metrics are going to be available in all the form reports, and the main report that we find when we are in this section is a report where we can find all the main form metrics breakdown by page. This page URL report shows us all the important metrics for each page where this form is embedded. This led us to see if users interact differently with the same form on different pages, or, for example, it's so useful when we have different version of a form in different pages. We can do something like an experiment, no, to evaluate different versions. This is so helpfully to understand the performance according to the page. But it's true that if we have several forms in the same page, we don't show to use this report, because we can have collect inconsistent data. It's very, or for instance, a simple subscription form in the footer can complicate things in the contact form page, because we can have two forms in the same page with completely different goals. So it's important to know the difference between forms and identify them individually. We can have forms with different goals on the same page, or we can analyze this to have different forms in the same page and collect all of them together is going to make us to take ground decisions. And for example, here we can see the pages and the main metrics, how many times a form was viewed, started, or complete. And here we can say the page. And this is useful, but we can have something like this. Okay, the form that we have on these pages is not the same. We are not collecting the same form. So we need to be sure about which form we are analyzing to be sure that we are comparing the same thing. We cannot compare a newsletter form with a sign-up form, because, of course, the interactions, the time that the user needs to fill in all the fields are completely different, and we are not to get insights of these comparisons. If we identify the form name, we are able to analyze them correctly, as we can see. And as a tip, we recommend, if you are going to use the page or the page report, clean all the parameters of the URLs. For example, the UTMs, the campaign parameters, because if not, we are going to have here a long list of the same URL. As we can see here, it's important to have the form of the names to analyze properly the forms. And the thing is that we don't have available the form name dimension of Matomo reports. So a way to solve this is to use events or to use a custom dimension to save the form name. In this case, for example, we use this a lot, we create a event in Tag Manager collecting the form name. To this event we use to keep track the form name when we have multiple forms in the same page or in the same site. If we do this, we configure the event, as you can see, a simple event in Tag Manager with the form name, and the trigger is when the form is submit. Then we can create something like that. Okay, with a custom report, we can create a report when the main dimension is the event. In this case, the event category that we created with the name of the form, and we can cross all these names with the metrics about the interactions on the forms. And this is so useful to get insights, because with this, if we have the forms identified on the site with this kind of analysis, we might notice that some header, wording, picture or background is performing better than others when we put a form. As well as we can use custom reports to segment for interaction for names. Custom reports are very useful to break down for metrics by dimension as channel or marketing campaign or device or country. So we use this a lot to segment all the information and get insight. We really think that customized data visualization is the best way to make data understandable. So we try to export all this data from the custom reports with the API. Sometimes, depending on the volume of data, on the complexity of the client, we simply use a spreadsheet or a database in some cases, and we use tools like Metabase or Looker Studio to draw this information and adapt this to the needs to the clients. And the last thing to say about this, about the form analytics reports, we saw, so far we talk about forms and the user forms flow, but let's go to talk 1 minute about the field reports, because this is so awesome in Matomo. Using these reports, we can identify when we drop off users, how time they are in a specific field, of if they are problems to select some of these fields. Here we can see the last example, when we can see, understand if our fields are used, and maybe we need to decide, or maybe we need to remove some of these fields to make a simple process to the users. We saw during these minutes that yes, we can use Matomo to analyze forms, and that we can have lot of detail. We can improve the usability, we can identify qualified traffic, and we can improve the customer relationships. If you have any doubt about these two methods, the goals or the functionalities plugin, we can discuss about this. As you can see, this is a critical functionality, and we need to measure and analyze all the detail to improve our conversions. Yeah, I don't know if there are any kind of question.
Great. Thank you for that great talk, Leticia. That was very insightful. And also, I can't stress enough how important that topic is, because exactly for a car, the tire is the most important touch point for your traction. A form is oftentimes the final touch point for a client or customer before the conversion. So not optimizing that could lead in both cases to costly damage. So thank you very much. We have a few questions. Perhaps before that, a question from my side. You mentioned multi-site forms. How do you have some workaround? Because I know that the form component from Matomo is not really optimized for multi-site forms. How do you usually handle those multi-site forms?
Yeah, that is a problem, as you say, because the reality is that 95% of the sites has more than one different form, at least one contact, subscribe form, or maybe is the main goal of the site. In these cases, we try to configure this from tag manager, identifying or sending specific events, and of course, trying to identify all the forms by name and ID to do what we did in before. Create a custom event to collect all 4 names and then create custom reports to analyze and cross information, because in the tool in Matomo it's not possible to use the 4 name dimension, so it's not possible to identify a specific form, and then we cannot use the reports. In the 90% of the cases, we export the data of the forms to analyze this in other tools to be able to cross with the form, the name, with other dimension, and to get more insights. Because I say only with the page, we can have really inconsistent data.
Great, thank you. So another question could be, you have been talking about different mechanisms and methods of tracking form data and form interaction. For example, the goals, the form analytics plugin, events, heat maps, session recordings. For whom would you recommend, or in which case would you recommend which method, or would you recommend using all equally or at the same time?
No, it is depend of the client and depends of the site. I only recommend the form analytics Matomo plugin when the goal of your site is to acquire new customers. Okay, with the form is the main functionality of your site, because I think that is the best tool to have all the detail. But for example, if you have an e-commerce, probably, yes, you are going to have a form, or you're going to have a checkout process, but there are other ways to measure this. For example, yes, with the goals, with events, and the form is relevant, but it's not the key of the conversion of the site. I recommend, for example, that the form analytics plugin, if you want to acquire new customers, or you have a brand site and the form is the way to contact with the users, when the form is the most important thing. And I recommend the goals always. The goals, I think that is very, very simple to configure. So you don't need to spend too much time to configure the goal. You don't need to spend too much time to analyze and create a report. So easy to have this. And in any moment, you can have all the historical data to understand the trends and to understand what is happening with your customers.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that especially the breakdown reports for the goals that you showed as well are very interesting, and they are delivered out of the box without doing much. So that's a great tool for getting things done. We have another question from Ronan. He wants, maybe it's off topic, but are you using AI in order to find out how to get more form conversions? For example, based on people behavior, or have you any plans on using AI in the future for form conversion optimization?
I would like in the moment, I never used it before. I was reading some things about front-end that he was creating some plugin and stuff about this. And yes, I think that in the future, probably we are going to need to use that, because it's a really interesting tool to get insights and probably to help us to think in some optimizations that maybe we don't see or we don't appreciate. But yes, at the moment, I don't have experience on it.
Thank you. Yeah, perhaps also a call for the plugin developers to just get something implemented out of the box to those plugins, to get some tutorials on with AI stuff, recommendation systems. Also, we have a question I'm currently thinking of developing a plugin in order to import goal values in the past. I will wrap up the question a bit because it's very long. He basically asked if you hydrate later form conversion information retroactively back into the form conversion session. For example, a user converts and later on you learn the user bought some stuff or qualified even to be an even better audience, something like that. Do you hydrate retroactively some sessions in the past?
Not directly, but it's true that I'm not sure if I understand right the question, but it's about what's happening when the user sends a form, if after it he's doing other kind of action. To do that, we used to use segments. And for example, we have all the metrics about the conversion of the form, and we use segments about the other action. If the user bought a product, if the user bought a product a week later, or some with cohorts. But in my case, I don't use this too much because always or at least with our customers, the form is the main functionality not related with an e-commerce. So they are trying to acquire new users or to get new subscribers or to get signups for an event. So the goal ends with sending the form. I'm not sure if I if I answered to your question.
Yeah, I think you scratched the question indeed, but also he asked if he hydrates a past visit with additional information that they learned later on in the session, how to deal with not creating a new visit, but hydrating the right session. Well, I can answer that one for you. You have to get the timestamp correct. Yeah. You have to not have the timestamp half an hour after the last action of a user, but you have to really hit the right timestamp of the last session that you want to hydrate the information to. We have also a last question because we are quite running out of time. I'm so sorry. As Matomo tracks both successful and unsuccessful form submissions, how can I make sure to filter out unsuccessful submissions? As we don't use thank you pages, I cannot use the conversions instead of submissions. I think you mentioned that in the talk, but perhaps you can give a quick wrap up of that.
Yes, so quick. This is for what we have submit and conversion separated in the Matomo forms. With the submits, we measure all the submits and successfully and unsuccessfully. If we have a high resubmitted rate, means that we have problems with the form in this part, and with the conversions only we measure the successfully forms. It's a problem if we don't have a page to detect the confirmation we don't have a specific event. For that, we always try to implement the conversion from Tag Manager to be sure that the conversion we only going to measure the successfully sent. And then after that, we can compare, okay, submits, conversions, and we can create any kind of rate to check if this is a problem or not.
Thank you very much, Leticia. This was very, very valuable and insightful, all your talk. And thank you for answering questions. And yeah, nice for all the audience that have been listening to it. And I hope you learned a lot. Thank you very much, Leticia.
Thank you, you, Ronan, and all the Matomo team, because you are making an amazing work with this conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.